All right, let's do a little audience participation, okay? Now listen, what I'm going to do is ask you to participate in this, but you don't have to tell anybody about it, okay? Right now we're just going to ask a very simple question, and I just want you to ask yourself that question, be open and honest with yourself, and then just keep track of it in your own mind. Trust me, it won't be that hard for you to be honest and for you to keep track of it, because they're really pretty straight up, right? First one. How many of you would you say you struggle with anxiety or worry? You get anxious, but I'm not asking if you have a diagnosis of an anxiety disorder or that you just get overwhelmed with it. How many would you say it's a struggle in your life for you to deal with anxiety or worry? Maybe you overthink things, maybe you overprocess, maybe you just get anxious about stuff that you can't control, right? Now, let me ask you this question. This is the follow-up question, not just do you struggle with it. When was it that you made that choice to start struggling with anxiety and worry? I mean, when was the moment in your life where you were like on the couch and you were like, hey, everything's going great. The future's not really my problem, but you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to just center in and start freaking out about stuff that I can't control, like tomorrow or conditions or other people's responses. When did you make the choice? I mean, remember the moment and just kind of draw your mind back to the moment when you made that choice. Okay, move on to another one. How about this one? How many of you would say that you struggle with control? Now, I'm not asking if you would say you're a controlling person, right? But how many of you get a little bit irritable, a little bit anxious when you start to lose control, right? How many of you would say, yes, I struggle when I'm not in control? It might be obvious to you if you never let anyone else drive that you might struggle with control, right? Or how many times have you in your life where you're like, I don't necessarily need to be in control, but somebody has to be in control. It has to be somebody else. I'm just being honest with you. This one's mine. I don't really struggle with anxiety or worry as much as I struggle with control. I'm okay. I don't get anxious or worry about anything as long as I'm in control of it. So let me ask you this question, same question. When did you decide to do that? When was it in your life where you're like, you know what? I'm just going to be a control freak, right? I'm going to freak out if I'm not in control. I'm going to freak out if things aren't in my control. And when was it that you decided everything was going well right up until this point, but now I got to be in control? Were you 10, 13? Was it in adulthood? Like, when was the day when you said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to shift gears and I'm going to really struggle to be in control. I'm going to have to be in control all the time all of a sudden. Okay, let's shift down to a little bit more like real life where some of us live, okay? Now, I'm going to list a few sins, okay? And you don't have to tell anybody about it, but how would you say you struggle with greed, right? With greed in your life. Or if you're not struggling with greed, maybe you never struggle with it, substitute in when you do struggle with, like maybe lust or gossip, or jealousy, or pornography, or put in the sin that you most struggle with in your life. And then I want you to ask yourself this very simple question. When did you choose to start that? Like, when was it that you were like, you know what? I have got plenty, and I am content, and I have plenty of income, I have plenty of money, and I can give it. But you decided, when was it you decided to say, you know what? I'm going to choose, instead of being content that I have enough, I'm going to choose to believe that I'll never have enough and that I should hold on to money. When was it you chose to start being greedy, right? Now, maybe it's lust for you, right? When was it that you just said, you know what? Here's the day, I'm going to start trading in a healthy marriage so that I can live a life that I'll feel constantly ashamed of in my head. When was it that you decided that, right? Was it a specific moment? Was it a day? When was the point when you said, you know what, I don't want to live free of shame and guilt. I'd love to live every single day just struggling with shame and guilt. What about gossip? I mean, maybe if you said, hey, when was the moment where you said, you know what, I believe people are being nice about me, but then all of a sudden, now today, I want to feel like other people shouldn't be able to trust me. And so today, instead of being the kind of person who speaks positively about, when was the day you decided, I'm going to start gossiping about other people? Or maybe it's another sin, jealousy or pornography, whatever it is. When was the day you decided it? Now, I'm going to guess just about all of you gave the exact answer, right? There wasn't a day, right? There wasn't a moment in your life when you weren't struggling with anxiety or worry and then you decided to. There wasn't a moment in your life when you didn't have control and you were okay and you just decided to freak out now, right? There wasn't a moment where you were like, I was okay, and then I decided to do this instead. But here's my question for you. If you didn't start by making a choice to start, right? If you didn't make a choice to start, then how did you end up where you are now? How did you end up struggling with anxiety or worry or control or greed or lust or anger or whatever your story is, right? If you didn't choose to get there, how'd you wind up here, right? The problem is that you and I made the exact same choice. We didn't choose those things. We became those kinds of people. We didn't choose to be that person who struggled with anxiety or worry or control or sin, right? We didn't choose to be that person. We became that person. You didn't choose those things to struggle with those things, right? Your life was perfectly formed to struggle with them. Whether it was the culture that you grew up in at home, maybe whether it was a trauma that you experienced in your life, or whether it was just the result of kind of going through life without really a direction, you became that person. And let me just point this out. You've been doing it for a long time, right? I've been doing it for a long time. My life, all of it, has been perfectly formulated for me to become the kind of person who struggles with those things. Can I just point out something to you that you didn't know about yourself before you came into the room today? And this is critically important. Every single one of you are an expert. You are an expert. Like you are a top-notch, if they were going to do a conversation on the news and they were looking for the expert in this area, they would call you. Malcolm Gladwell is a famous author, and he said that once a person has spent 10,000 hours in one particular area, practicing one particular thing, then that person is now an expert in that field. You have spent every moment of every single day of all of your life, whether that life has been 10 years long so far, or 15, or 50, or 75 years old. However long you've been on this earth, you have spent every minute being formed by the things around you. You are an expert in the area of spiritual formation. There is nobody on the face of the planet throughout all of time who knows more about your spiritual formation than you, because you've lived it all. You were formed by all the things around you. Can I just say this to you? Spiritual formation is not optional. It's not something that we get to choose or don't choose. You are in the habit. You are in the life of being formed, and there's an invitation of your life where you could leave the struggle and find the freedom. There's an invitation offered to every single one of us in our lives where we could leave the struggle with our control, our anxiety, our worry, our depression, our envy, our lust, our jealousy, our gossip, our anger, right? Where we could leave the life of slavery and find the life of freedom. And it is exactly the offer that Jesus made to people then and makes to you and me now. It is found in 10 very important words. But before we get to the 10 words, we've got to get the picture where the 10 words happen. There are 4 boys, 4 young men, if you want to call them that, right? These 4 young men, Peter and Andrew and James and John, they were back doing what they were had always done, right? They were doing what their father and their grandfather before them had done. They were doing the family business. They were fishermen. Now, that doesn't mean that they wanted to be fishermen, to be honest. The hope of every young Hebrew boy in their time was not to go do the things their parents did before them. The hope of every Hebrew young man was that they would come to find the Torah and that they would become a person who is so recognized as valuable by their culture. They had hoped, just like every other young man, that a rabbi would look at them and see something special. And that a rabbi would come to them and say, you know what, I would like to invite you to be a disciple. So often when we think about the disciples and Jesus, we think, well, Jesus must have come up with that word because he had the disciples, right? We think of it like it's the disciples, but disciple is not a word that Jesus came up with. It was a part of the culture. These young men, Peter and Andrew and James and John, they were back at their father's job, right? They were apprenticing under their father and learning the family trade like their father and their grandfather before them, because they didn't get chosen to do what they wanted to do first. They wanted to be the disciple of a rabbi. They wanted the prestige. They wanted the recognition that they had what it takes. And they were back at their job. Two of them, Peter and Andrew, were fishing, and James and John were mending the nets, right? They're just kind of doing life. And Jesus steps up to them, and he says 10 words that were literally a game changer. They literally changed everything about Peter and Andrew and James and John's life. And his words in that moment could change your life just like it changed theirs. Their lives, up to that moment, just like yours, had been formed, perfectly formed and formulated to yield this exact moment where they felt less than, where they felt overlooked, where they felt stuck. That's exactly how those young men felt when Jesus said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. 10 words that changed the story of Peter and Andrew and James and John, who were just fishing or mending nets and doing their thing. They felt stuck in their family story. They felt dictated to by their circumstances in their life. They felt overlooked. They felt like they had what it takes, maybe, but somebody didn't see it, or they felt less than. And they were just returned back to him. And Jesus said, no, I see something in you and for your life that is different. And he offered them an invitation that changed everything. But can I just say this to you? It is not these 10 words that were magic. Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men is not an invitation that has magic words to it. It's not a spell he put on their life. In fact, I would just say this to you. The same thing is true. These words did not change Peter and Andrew and James and John. He didn't change their life with these 10 words. It was their response to this invitation that changed everything. And that's true for you too. How you respond to this invitation is the determining factor. It is the determining factor to whether or not you'll feel stuck a year from now in your worry and anxiety. It is the determining factor on whether you'll find freedom from that controlling nature. It's the determining factor of whether you'll find freedom from envy and lust and jealousy and greed and all of the things that hold you back, from the sin that so easily entangles. That is so true of this moment for them. Jesus invited them into something so big and something so transformation, but it was their response to Jesus' invitation. Now we got to make sure we understand that invitation, because if you misunderstand the invitation, then you're responding to the wrong thing. Can we just notice real quick what he didn't ask them to do? He did say, "Follow me and I'll make you fishers of men." Let's look at a list of things that he didn't say. He didn't ask if they wanted to take a class on how to become a disciple. He didn't say, hey, this class is going to meet on Tuesdays from 3 to 4:30, and we're going to read this stuff. He didn't ask them if they wanted to read a book together. He didn't say, hey, so-and-so wrote a great book, and I think it'll help us get a really good understanding. And so I think you and I should read this together, right? When he made disciples, he didn't make disciples by setting up an appointment and going to a class or reading a book together. He didn't ask them if they wanted to know more about the Bible. He didn't say, you know what? I know you know a lot about the Torah, but we've got to understand some other things, and I'd like to teach those things to you. He didn't ask them into a class, a book study, a Bible study. And look at this. He didn't ask them if they believed in him or not. He didn't ask them to first ascribe belief to him, and he didn't ask them if they want to go to heaven when they died. What did he ask them to do? And the invitation into our life, into yours, into their life, it could literally change everything when we understand it and respond with yes. Jesus didn't invite them into a bunch of do stuff. Believe this information, do these things, know this stuff. Jesus invited them into a relationship. It's a relationship where they would spend time with him and then become like him and then do the things that he does, right? It's a very simple relationship. He didn't ask them if they wanted to know something, do something. He literally said, do you want to come be with me? Follow me? And when you're spending time with me, you'll become like me. I'll form you. I'll change you. And then when you're changed by me because you're with me, you're going to become faithful to the things that I'm faithful to. Look at how it looks if you think about it. The idea of this is that follow me and I'll make you fishers of men is a very simple invitation, isn't it? A disciple of Jesus is a person who's a follower of Jesus, who is being formed in the image, in the likeness of Jesus, because I'm spending time with Jesus. And when I spend time with him and I'm formed by him, then I become faithful to the mission of Jesus. That's what Jesus said was a disciple. Do you want to be a disciple? Do you want to be a disciple of Jesus? He's not asking us to pick one or part of this whole thing. Somewhere along the line, by the way, we took follow me and I'll make you fishers of men from one invitation that he offered to Peter and Andrew and James and John, and it changed everything about their story. We somehow decided, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take one invitation from Jesus and I'm going to part it up. I'm going to ask people if they want to be a follower of Jesus, and then if they want to continue that journey and become formed by him. We somehow treated it like it was, like spiritual formation is optional. Can I just say this to you? Jesus' invitation to them wasn't, do you want to follow me? And then maybe, do you want to take the advanced course and grow with me? Jesus' invitation was, follow me and I will make you fishers of men. If you spend time with me, you'll become like me. If you're spending time with me and becoming like me, then you're naturally going to become faithful to me and to the mission that I've called you to. Because here's what Jesus knew. Here's what you know, that spiritual formation is not optional. That you and your whole life has been perfectly formulated to form you into the person you are today. And the question isn't, will you be the same tomorrow? The question is, will you be different tomorrow on purpose, or will you just take what comes at you? And what's so important that we understand is that this isn't a two-tiered invitation where Jesus says, hey, if you'll follow me, and then maybe one day you can opt into the discipleship track. That's not the idea. Jesus invites all of us to be changed by him by spending time with him. Because here's the important, critical piece. You don't become a disciple. You become as a disciple. Let me say that again because it's an important distinction. You don't become a disciple. You don't just say, yeah, I'm in for this class and it'll be 8 weeks long and I go to these things and I'm going to take a discipleship class. You don't become a disciple. You become as a disciple. Now listen, we're going to talk about this over the next few weeks, and it's critically important that you and I engage in this because it changed everything for them, and it'll change everything for us if we choose to simply do this, to become as a disciple, to follow Jesus, be formed by Jesus, and then become faithful to the mission of Jesus. It is by that he changes everything. It's what he did with Peter and Andrew and James and John, right? He said, hey, you guys, your lives have been perfectly formed. for you to feel overlooked. Your lives have been perfectly formed for you to be back at your dad's job, for you to apprentice under him, and for you to become the fisherman that your father was going to. And your lives have been perfectly formed, but my invitation to you is to trade in that life. And if instead of following that path, you'll choose to follow me, I will make you into people who have a mission that's so much bigger. I'll make you, form you into somebody who has a meaning in life. They understood the invitation and they responded to it because they know this, that direction always starts with a decision. I mean, they could have decided, maybe let me think through this process a little bit, right? No. They didn't decide to think through it, right? Because not deciding to follow Jesus is deciding to follow Jesus. And they chose in that moment, they're like, yeah, I'm going to throw down the nets, right? Because what he's offering me is the life I want, not the life I've been handed. You feel stuck with your control. You feel stuck with your envy. You feel stuck with the jealousy or the greed or the overthinking, the anxiety. You feel stuck by the story you've been handed. Jesus' invitation gives you freedom from that if you'll follow him, and he'll make you into something that is someone who is faithful. So let me just ask you a couple of really critical questions that are so important. Is this a decision that you need to make today? Now listen, it's just the first decision, right? They didn't decide that day and go, yeah, I'll follow you. Let me go back to my regular life, and maybe I'll grow later. They said, you're going to go forward. I'm going to go forward with you. The invitation that Jesus offered them was to be covered in the dust of the rabbi. That's what he was saying. You see, for Peter and Andrew and James and John, the idea of follow me wasn't a metaphor. For us, somewhere along the line, we made follow me a metaphor for, am I a follower of Jesus? Am I a Christian, right? Did I make a decision to raise my hand or pray a prayer or get into water or do whatever I felt like God was calling me to do at that one moment to respond? And did I cross the line of faith? That wasn't the invitation for Peter and Andrew and James and John, right? The invitation for them was, follow me and I'll form you. So here's the question. When they decided that moment, their invitation wasn't to follow him in a metaphorical way, pray a prayer or do something. They're literally were invited to follow him. Jesus said, I want you to be behind me. And I want you to be so close behind me that when I kick up dust, it lands on you. Right? I want you to be so close to me that you become like me. And as a result of being close to me and becoming like me, you'll be faithful to the things that I've done. You see, what Jesus is inviting them into is a life of transformation, not just passive formation. Transformation, where he changes them, forms them into someone. Who are you following, right? You're following somebody, right? Jesus wasn't asking something of them, by the way, that they weren't already doing. They were already following somebody. They were following their dad. They were apprenticing to their father. And they were going to learn the fishing trade from their father like he learned it from his father and his father before him. And Jesus wasn't asking them to do something brand new. He was just saying, listen, instead of that life that you've been handed, what if you had a full and complete and rich and satisfying life available to you? So let me ask you this question. Is this a decision that you've made? It starts there, doesn't end there. It's just the first step, and it's a critically important one. Maybe today is the day where you go, you know what? I'm ready to make a decision to follow Jesus because I don't want to be stuck in the life I've always had, the pain I've always experienced, the struggle I've always gone through. I'm instead going to trade in my story for his story. Maybe that is the invitation you'd make today. Or maybe you're going, you know what, I made that decision when I was 7, but I never really thought about it as a life decision. I just thought about it as an eternity decision. Like, isn't that what we do? Somewhere along the line, we decided it wasn't really a life decision or a lifestyle choice. It was somehow an eternal life choice. Do I want to go to heaven when I die? And that's an important place to start. I certainly want to spend eternity with God in heaven, but I don't want to wait for eternity to happen. I want to spend eternity with him starting now. So if you haven't made that decision, I'd love an opportunity to help you do that. Today would be a great day to make that decision, and we're not going to put a whole bunch of pressure on you about it. You don't got to walk an aisle or do anything. But let me just say this to you. It is an important decision, and it's one that you have to, because direction starts with a decision. Can I just invite you into this? If you're here today and you're like, I want to begin a relationship with Jesus, there's a couple of options to you. First of all, you need to tell Jesus about that, because you're not following me, you're following him. The best way to do that is to tell him about it in prayer. God, I love you. I know that you gave your life so that I could have a life that doesn't struggle, that instead finds freedom, and I want to follow you for it. I want to be covered in your dust. I want to be so close to you that you form and shape me, and I want to become the kind of person who's obedient to you. And if that's what you want to do, I would love to share that journey with you. There's 2 ways I'd love for you to do that, maybe. If you want to, you can track me down after this service here, wave me down, send me an email, jeremy@ourjourney.com. Those are all fine. Or you could go to any of our web pages and click the Next Step button on the bottom right-hand corner. In the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see it says Next Step. You click it, and there's an option that says, I want to begin a relationship with Jesus. And that's really what it is. The direction, or that decision, determines the direction of your life. And then every one of us have this question to answer. What has been forming you? What has been forming your life up to this point? My guess is there are some things from your upbringing. There are some things from your trauma or painful experiences. There are some things from your life that have formed who you are. They've caused you, they're perfectly formulated to create in you that part of your life that struggles with anxiety or worry. What is it that's forming you? Is it things you're watching or thinking of? Because your life is perfectly formulated to become the person you are today. And spiritual formation is not optional. If following Jesus is optional, being formed by Jesus is optional, but you're going to be formed by something. So what is it that's forming you? And then I want to ask you one question. What do you want out of life? You ever stop for a minute to think about that? Have you ever stopped to think, what do I really want out of life? What am I really looking for? What do I really want out of life? You know, every single time that Jesus asks people to follow him, it always is predicated by their want first. He says, if you follow me, I'll make you fishers of men, but you got to want to, right? And then other places when Jesus says, hey, if you want to be my disciple, take up your cross and follow me. It's always predicated with your want. Your desire matters to God. He will never take away your agency. If you want to struggle with anxiety and worry, you can. If you want to struggle and be controlling, you can. If you want to be stuck in your greed and your anger and your lust and you want to be stuck in that, it's up to you if you want to. But there's an invitation. What do you want? Do you want freedom? Then the invitation is so simple and yet so profound. If you follow Jesus, if you walk closely with him, so closely that if he kicks up dust, it'll land on you. You'll be covered in the dust of the rabbi. And as you spend time with Jesus, you'll be formed in the image of who he is. And as you're formed, you'll become faithful. We're going to unpack all of this and how it could change everything in your life over the next few weeks and over our winter group series. You need to be a part of it. It starts tonight at 5:30, and we'll launch into part 2 of Formed next week. Do not miss it.